So I went ahead and updated kind of the colors here. I thickened the stroke to 4 points instead of 5, just to kind of make it very thick so when you zoom out, you can really make out the lines really well. I also updated our key right here. And I'm going to go ahead and move our key over here because it's all about saving room. This takes up a lot of horizontal space. So if I go ahead and move my key over here, it's really going to help. And I might need to do some ungrouping here. There we go. So now we're going to move it over here, and now it's more concise. And what's great about this is the key is really close to the lines, so you don't have to look very hard to understand what line is which. So it makes it easier for the viewer to see it. I can even thicken these up even more dramatically, just as long as I can make it easy. Of course, as you know, I'm going to change these. Instead of white, I'm going to make these the corresponding colors to once again help the user and the viewer be able to digest this information and assign these and look at them a lot easier. So I finished up correlating the color with the key, and one thing we want to do is we have all these nice kind of, really want the user's eye to be drawn to this kind of more colorful part of the portion. This is really important information, but it's not as critical. It is critical to look at, but let's just maybe not, there's so much attention because it's a bright white drawn to the numbers. We really want people's eye to be drawn here. And then they can refer back to the numbers to get an idea of what it's talking about. So all that to say, let's kind of make it a little bit of a medium gray. So it kind of blends into the background. We still want it to be legible. Let's just kind of see what maybe just a little bit of a darker light gray looks like. And notice how this really starts to pop out over here. I also made sure this was in dollar amounts, and we could probably afford to make this a tiny bit smaller. Once again, to kind of draw the user's eye here and not be so heavy on the left. Because it's all about balance, and you don't want to have something be too heavy or too bright on the far side of a design. You really want to have that one main focal point and not have too many things drawing your eye at the same time. So we can continue to make these bold. I like having these bold and these light because there's contrast between those. So I don't kind of mix these two columns up when I look at it right away. There's kind of some differentiation with the type. So I'm pretty happy with that. So here we are. I think in about 15 minutes, we were able to kind of create kind of a somewhat attractive line graph. We could probably continue to work on this more, but all this was created just by using Illustrator's line graph to help get us started with data points and then make sure the line graphs were accurate. And then we're able to ungroup that and really kind of add a polish and shine using our bright gradients and keeping with the theme of some of the infographics we've been doing in the beginning of the class. So one thing we can do, there's an option here called the area graph tool, and you kind of see that little icon, how you can actually do draw kind of a solid box underneath the line graph to really kind of ground the data. So instead of having it be floating and then you have to have your eye look down to the data, it really helps to ground the data and help your eye connect it to the bottom. And I'll kind of show you, it's a little harder to explain, but I'm going to take the pen tool and I'm going to just trace this. Just tracing the line, and I'm going to draw it all the way down to the bottom of this data set. Doesn't have to be perfect because we can always change it using the direct selection tool later and tweak it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send this all the way to the back. I can even just right click and just send it to the back, or do my little keyboard shortcut. And I'm going to do the eyedropper tool, sample that gradient, make sure it's a fill, and kind of adjust it so maybe it goes from light to dark. And so it kind of helps to ground the data. I do see a problem with just having one data set. There's nothing to really ground that data, so it's going to be kind of a floating point. That might be the only issue with this particular method, but I think it works really great visually. It kind of really helps fill out the graph a little bit instead of having large open gaps. So if you have a data set that works really well with this method, I'd say go for it. I'm going to do kind of bright on the top and a little bit darker on the bottom. And what I'm going to do is going to right click and send this all the way to the back, or use my keyboard shortcut. I'm going to do Command right bracket to pop it one more layer in front. I'm going to do the same thing for the purple. And you can kind of see how this really looks great. I think our data set might have an issue because our line graph, we only have 1 point on that one line graph for that generation. So let's send that. I don't have to send that too far in the back. So you can see how that looks neat. So the only issue is, what do we do here? Do we do a line here to kind of represent the blue? We don't know. So there's how that looks. I probably might take away the gradient on here. I could even make that white now because now we have a lot of gradients going on. We can even add a drop shadow to some of these strokes. Bring it back a little notch. Let me add a drop shadow to the stroke. So that kind of adds a little bit of layers to it. We could do the same thing with these, the solid gradient boxes. We could apply the same drop shadow, and it kind of has that layered look. But for this particular graph, I don't think it'll work quite as well, but I'm just showing you just kind of some options that you can do to kind of spice up your line charts and line graphs a little bit. So there you have it. Hopefully you enjoyed this class. We got to do all of these exciting infographics as extra lessons, hopefully added to the class either now or later. Whenever I have a chance, I'm going to start putting all these little graphics together to make them more concise, maybe have a theme, and do our little title in the middle, just like when we were blocking out in the beginning. I just wanted to kind of end it now to be a good steward of your time and to not go on too long. But look for those extra lessons. Maybe they're already added. I'll go ahead and send out an email whenever those are ready. You can be able to see how I make all this into one theme and try to make it all work.